And what I want you to do now is we're going to set up our breading station and talk about the logistics of a breading station, and we'll just get everything organized, okay? And we'll set everything up. Then we will cut the chicken, season the chicken, and we'll go through the whole breading station and actually bread the chicken. So what I want you to do is grab that half cup of flour and get like a little tray or a dinner plate and just put that half cup of flour on that plate. One of the times when I was writing this recipe, I went through the classic way of breading, which a lot of times people will take the salt and pepper and seasonings, whatever, and they season the flour. And then they dredge their meat through the seasoned flour, which is a classic way of doing it. But I found that it wasn't very consistent because it's hard to have the exact measurement of flour that you need without having too much, without having too little. And then you have all that seasoning in there. And sometimes the seasoning goes to the bottom, you don't get on the chicken. It's very inconsistent of the chicken pieces. Some will get seasoned, some won't. So I found in this recipe, you'll see once we have our breading station set up, we will be seasoning each piece of chicken first, then dredging it through the flour and going through our breading station, okay? So we're not seasoning this flour at all. It's just plain half cup of all-purpose flour. The next thing in our breading station we're going to want to have standing by is our egg wash. So that's where we pull out our 2 large eggs in a medium-sized bowl, and we're going to mix that together with 2 tablespoons of milk. Just your regular classic breading. Always, if you're wondering if you're doing a classic breading station, for every large egg you have a tablespoon of milk. It's just what they do in the restaurants. If you want a little richer, then a tablespoon of cream, but we'll just do milk for now. So set your flour to the side. Okay, we're just building our components of our breading station, and we're going to crack these 2 eggs in the medium bowl and beat it with the 2 tablespoons of milk. All right. Whoa. Put the milk in there. Awesome. Take your whisk. Give it a really thorough mixing. You want this completely homogenized, okay? So that when you're dragging your chicken through it, it's going to get nice and evenly coated of this egg wash. You don't want a big yolk, part of a yolk stuck to your chicken, right? So very thorough. And that's the second component of our breading station. First component is the flour. Second component is the egg wash. Our next component of our breading station is going to be the actual breading itself. So the panko and the 1/2 cup of Parmigiano Reggiano. So what I want you to do is get a tray, put your panko on there. So that's 1 1/4 cups of panko, which should be enough, and a 1/2 cup of that Parmesan that we grated. So we have a 1 cup measure. I'm going to steal half of it and put it in there. You can go a little scant if you want, save more for the top of the chicken if you want, and just go like a scant 1/2 cup in the panko, because you'll notice that we will be tossing out a little bit of this panko at the end. Chances are you won't need 100% of it, and Parmigiano is a little bit expensive, so just go a little scant if you want on that 1/2 cup measure, okay? Little pro tip there for you. And we just combine that up, and there's our breading. Okay, so far our 3 components of our breading station, we have the flour on a plate or a tray. In a medium bowl, we have our egg wash, and then we have our panko with a 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese mixed into it, okay? The main thing we're going to be breading, obviously, is the chicken. So let's move on to that, shall we? I'm going to teach you guys how to cut the chicken. All right, and we'll talk about different recipes and what they do, so on and so forth. And then just get a tray or a plate that you can put the chicken on, and we're going to be seasoning it. Okay, well, let's do that. Actually, let's make up our seasoning mix. We haven't done that part yet. Let's do that before we cut the chicken and have the chicken sitting out. 4 ingredients, which is the teaspoon of salt, which I have here. You can't really see it because it's in a white container. There you go. Can you see it there at the bottom? Anyway, it's in there. Trust me. 1 teaspoon of salt. We're going to mix that with 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, then a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Grab a little spoon, or you can use your fingers or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And you're just going to mix that together. And this is going to be your seasoning mix for your chicken before we drag it through the flour. Let's grab that chicken now, and I'm going to show you guys how to cut it, and then we're going to put it on this tray once we're done cutting it. As I've mentioned 100 times before, when you're handling raw chicken, make sure you're not spreading that salmonella bacteria all over your kitchen. Always dedicate one dirty hand, one clean hand. We're going to break that rule a little bit tonight, though, and I'll show you why in a minute when we go to breading. But for now, let's keep one dirty hand, one clean hand. A lot of times with a recipe, they'll tell you to get a breast of chicken, and what do they tell you to do? Get a hammer, like a mallet, and you're pounding the heck out of that piece of chicken and put it in some plastic wrap or something. So you're making it thinner and you're making it a more even thickness. And I get that. To me, I think that's a lot harder work than just getting a piece of chicken and cutting it in half horizontally. You're going to have, I think, better presentation. It's going to be even. It's just an easier way to do it. Let me show you how. So we have 2 chicken breasts totaling 1 pound, 454 grams for both. Okay, so you're looking approximately 225 grams a piece. And we're going to put that on our board and we're going to cut it this way, horizontally. Here's the pro tip I want to share with you. If I was having this on my board, okay, I'll just see if I can give you a good perspective here. And I tried to cut it horizontally with my knife. In order to get my knife through half of the chicken, look at my knuckles are getting in the way because they're on the countertop, right? And look at the angle of my knife. It's going to be like a wedge. It won't be exactly parallel to the cutting board. So what I'm doing instead is I'm putting my hands over the countertop so I can put my knife completely straight, parallel, and cut that chicken completely in half. So I'm going to turn my board so I can actually do it now. But that's where I'm placing my hand, over the edge of the counter. And then I'm going to take that chicken and literally just cut it in half, keeping my hand flat, not like this, because obviously I'm going to cut my fingertips off, keeping my hand flat, looking at it and eyeballing it just half, and use a sawing motion if you're scared, so you can really keep an eye on where your knife is going. Okay. And before you get all the way through, what I want you to do is just open it up. And this would be called a butterfly cut, okay? And you would leave it like that. We're not doing that. We want to create 2 portions. And obviously some chicken, just the way it's shaped, it might not be a full portion if I cut it right there. So I'm just going to cut it like that. So I have 2 more equal sized portions, okay? Let me show you one more time. And we're just going to set that aside on a tray here. So again, pulling out my chicken breast and getting my hand off of the counter so I can run this completely flat, this knife, go through. This is a bigger one, obviously, but it's okay. You're going to have different sizes. So you're almost cut through it. You're going to open it up. Again, that's your butterfly cut. And then I just want you to take your knife and cut it so you have 2 thin portions that are equal in thickness, pretty much. And we're putting this chicken on this tray that's standing by. Chances are you're going to eat both sides of that chicken. So I want you to season both sides of the chicken. It only makes sense, right? So take that little seasoning mix that we just did up and just take in your fingers and gently just season each side. I've already washed my hands, but I'm going to get my one hand dirty again so I can flip these over. I mean, you can use a pair of tongs if you wanted to, by all means, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And that's going to get a really consistent seasoning on each piece of the chicken. We won't have to cross our fingers when we're dredging it through the flour to hopefully this piece of chicken gets seasoned all right, right? There's no wishing or guessing or anything. We know each piece is going to be seasoned beautifully. I got a piece of basil on there. Not that that's a big problem, but, and then going through, flipping them, seasoning the other side as well, okay? I'm going to show you a great tip for breading chicken so you don't have these big Hulk fingers, okay? What I mean by that is when you're breading stuff, you keep getting your fingers coated and coated, and pretty soon your finger is like that thick because it's been breaded. Let me show you the wrong way to do it first, then I'll show you the right way to do it. And another big pro tip for you, after the chicken is breaded, you can put it back on this pan where it had the raw chicken, because even though it's breaded, it's not cooked yet, it's still raw, so you're not cross-contaminating anything, okay? So my pan with the raw chicken, after it's breaded, it's gonna go back on that same pan. Let me just move the flour here. I'm just gonna turn you this way a little bit so you can see all areas. Let me show you first what not to do with one, then I'll show you the other 3 on what to do, okay? So I'm taking my chicken, which has been seasoned, and I'm just dragging it through the flour. Let me move that temporarily. Okay, just putting in the flour. As long as it's thoroughly coated with flour, I get the sides of it. We're going to dip it in the egg wash just briefly. Watch this. Okay, Putting it in there just to get each side wet. You're not leaving it in there for very long. And then here's a good pro tip for you. Just drag it up the side of the bowl on both sides to get rid of any excess. So I had some flour there still. There we go. Get rid of any excess egg wash, and then just lay it in the breading. Okay, and then you can take it, lay it on both sides. Once it's thoroughly coated with the breading, then you can go through, take some breading, press it on top. There's lots there. You don't have to be stingy with it. Just try and get as much of that breading adhered to that chicken as you can. All right, and then once it's done, place it on your tray. And what's going to happen is your fingers are going to become breaded, because once I take another piece of chicken and dredge it in the flour, dip in the egg wash and the breading, my dirty hand, that I want to keep dirty, is going to have like coating and coating and coating of breading on there. So here's what I want you to do instead to sort of avoid that, mostly anyway. Take your chicken, okay, so we have our flour, and move that out of the way again temporarily. We have our flour, and all I do is just move the flour to the side. Coat all your chicken at the same time, okay? One piece at a time, but just leave it there in the flour. It's not going to harm anything. Get it thoroughly coated, and then just leave that to the side. Do that third one. That way all your chicken is coated with flour, ready to go. Remember, your chicken's already pre-seasoned. Then you're going to do each piece at a time, but here's the difference you're going to do. Still take your dirty hand, dip in the egg wash, okay? Both sides in the egg wash. Same thing. Drag it both sides on the bowl just to get rid of any excess, and then put it on your breading. Then you're going to switch to your clean hand. Now, I get it. We're going to make both hands dirty, contaminated with salmonella bacteria, but that's okay. And you're going to sprinkle some of your breading on top so you can keep this hand somewhat unbreaded, so we don't have breaded fingers, human fingers, right? And flip it back and forth, get as much on there as you can, pat it on there, so on and so forth, right? So it's thoroughly coated with breading. Take it off, put it on your tray, and look at the difference. Okay, these fingers are starting to get coated, and if I keep doing it at that first way, they're gonna be huge. This hand is still pretty much clean, although it's contaminated with raw bacteria, but you know what I mean? I'm not breading my fingers. So this is a lot better way to do it. Keep your dirty hand for the flouring, for the egg wash, using that dirty hand as well to transfer that egg wash chicken to your breading station, and then use your clean hand to finish the actual breading part. And you will keep your hands that much cleaner by doing that. And only one hand will get a little bit dirty with egg wash and flour and won't be breaded. Okay, nothing sticking to this hand pretty much. And that's how you go about an easier breading station. Whether you're breading anything, you'd be breading vegetables, for crying out loud. It doesn't really matter. Follow the same procedures and you will be golden. You really will. One last piece of chicken. And the reason why we floured, I'm not sure if I mentioned that yet or not, the reason why we floured first before the egg wash, it really creates that glue that will help bind the egg wash and the breading to that piece of chicken, so that when you bite into it, it doesn't come crumbling off, right? That's a big mistake that people make, is they figure just egg and just breading. No, you need that flour component in there too. And hey, if you're gluten-free, then find some sort of gluten-free flour that you can use for that component, just to help it stick to the item that you're breading. So you could use an almond flour or a rice flour or something like that, okay? Instead of a regular all-purpose wheat flour. But again, you'd have to substitute the breading as well, because remember, panko is gluten in there. But here's another good pro tip for you. Man, I'm just giving you guys pearls tonight. If you're looking to do this for somebody that is gluten intolerant, they can't have gluten, they're celiac, right? If it's celiac, you have to be extremely careful. But what you can do for your breading is buy those pork rinds. They're really, really cheap. They're a lot more inexpensive than you bought a package of gluten-free breading. And you just pulse the pork rinds in your food processor until they look like panko crumbs, and then you just bread them in that, and use like a rice flour or an almond flour or something for the flour component of your breading station.